Ancient Egypt, a civilization born from the Nile. Ancient Egypt is one of the most fascinating, long-lasting, and complex civilizations in human history. Around 5,000 years ago, in Africa, along the banks of the Nile River, a civilization emerged that left an indelible mark on art, religion, politics, science, and even on the very conception of life and death. In this video, we will explain where ancient Egypt was located, the stages throughout its 3,000 years of history, the social organization led by the Pharaoh, its religious beliefs surrounding death, its artistic expressions, and finally, the influence Egyptian culture has had on Western civilization. Geography protected Egypt for centuries. To the north, the Mediterranean Sea. To the south, natural cataracts, today the site of the Aswan Dam, and to the east and west, vast desert regions. This relative isolation favored a remarkable cultural and political continuity, something uncommon in the ancient world. However, Egypt's existence can only be explained by the Nile River. Each year, its floods inundated nearby lands, turning its banks into fertile soil that made agriculture possible in the middle of the desert. This regular cycle shaped the calendar, the economy, and religion. For the Egyptians, the Nile was a divine gift that allowed life, where otherwise there would have been only death. The history of ancient Egypt developed over 3,000 years, beginning in 3100 BC, when King Menes unified the territories along the Nile, and ending in 30 BC, when Emperor Octavian turned Egypt into a province of the Roman Empire. During this long period, Egypt went through three main stages. The Old Kingdom, when the foundations of the Egyptian state and society were established. This was the era of the great pharaohs, such as Khufu, and the construction of the pyramids. After a period of political and social crisis, the Middle Kingdom emerged. The power of the pharaoh, such as Mentuhotep II, increased, and Egypt expanded territorially toward Nubia in the south, Libya in the west, and Syria in the east. Finally, the New Kingdom was a time of maximum cultural splendor, with very well-known pharaohs such as Ramses II. From around 100 BC onward, peoples such as the Persians, Greeks, and Romans invaded Egypt, beginning its decline. The key figure in ancient Egypt was the pharaoh, who held all powers. He made the laws, commanded the army, ruled alone, and owned a large portion of the land. In addition, he was granted divine status, serving as the intermediary between the gods and humans. His main duty was to maintain cosmic harmony and ensure the prosperity of the country. Below the pharaoh were the priests and high officials, responsible for administration, religion, and justice. Scribes held a key role as the guardians of knowledge, administrative records, and sacred texts. Artisans, merchants, and peasants formed the base of society, while slaves, although they existed, were not as decisive as in other ancient civilizations. One notable aspect was the role of women. Compared to other cultures of antiquity, Egyptian women enjoyed significant legal rights. They could own property, sign contracts, divorce, and in exceptional cases, even rule. One woman, Cleopatra, who reigned from 50 to 30 BC, was the last pharaoh queen of Egypt. Egyptian religion was deeply polytheistic. It included many gods who represented natural forces, moral principles, and aspects of human experience. Ra was the god of the sun and creation. Osiris symbolized death and resurrection. Isis embodied motherhood and magic, and Horus represented authority, order, and justice. Few cultures reflected on death as deeply as the Egyptians. For them, earthly life was only a stage. Human beings were composed of several spiritual elements that had to reunite after death in order to achieve immortality. This explains the importance of mummification, a sophisticated technique intended to preserve the body as a support for the soul. Tombs were filled with funerary goods, sacred texts, and everyday objects necessary for life in the afterlife. The famous Book of the Dead guided the deceased through the judgment before Osiris, where the heart was weighed against the feather of truth. Egyptian architecture is one of the most recognizable in the ancient world. It astonishes with the scale and precision of its constructions. Highlights include the pyramids of Giza, especially the Great Pyramid of Khufu, the only one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world still standing, the colossal Great Sphinx of Giza, with the body of a lion and the head of a human, the temples of Luxor and Karnak, enormous and richly decorated, and the temple of Abu Simbel, famous for its 4 colossal statues carved into the rock. Sculpture and painting had mainly religious purposes, and many examples have been found in tombs. For instance, the seated scribe is a funerary statue of a high official that represents the deceased alive and extremely attentive with striking realism. Egyptian paintings typically depict figures in profile in a rigid style, without movement or depth. They were usually created on stone walls and papyrus, using mineral pigments to achieve very vivid colors. The development of hieroglyphic writing allowed the Egyptians to record their history, religion, and administration. It was a complex system made up of around 1,000 symbols that could represent sounds, words, or ideas, and it was used in temples and tombs. This system was deciphered thanks to the discovery in 1799 of the famous Rosetta Stone by Napoleon's troops during their invasion of Egypt. In 1822, the French philologist Jean-François Champollion successfully deciphered the hieroglyphs, allowing historians to uncover much of Egyptian history and culture. The legacy of ancient Egypt is immense. It influenced Greek and Roman culture and, through them, Western civilization. Its knowledge in medicine, mathematics, and astronomy laid fundamental foundations for later scientific development. The grandeur of its monuments reminds us that this was a civilization that aspired to eternity, and, to a great extent, achieved it. An extraordinary representation of Egyptian civilization can be found in the Grand Egyptian Museum, inaugurated in Cairo in 2025.